Hey there everyone, Spazzy here aka Syndromes, and welcome back to Avorion for just a little bit. Now, today's video is not per se a part of the Let's Play series, but it is really closely tied to what I'm going to be doing in the next couple of episodes, and also what I have been doing in the last couple of episodes, as well as how these episodes are going to be shot. Now, at the time recording this video, and this is one of the reasons why I'm making this video in the first place, is to remind you that I have posted a kind of like a poll in the channel's, the community section of this channel, asking you guys whether or not you would prefer the 1 hour unedited type of videos or the 30-minute edited versions, because honestly right now, at the time recording this video anyway, it's pretty much a 50-50 split. I know there's a lot of good things about it, a lot of bad things about it, uploading it uncut, so to speak, because I do go through those videos, and it's kind of a balance between allowing you guys to just go through that video and know what's going on, while at the same time cutting out all of the many quiet moments in Avorion, because Avorion is slow-paced. There's no other way to just, say it. And, yeah, that's basically the current situation there. So, anyway, about today's episode. I still think, to this date, that the Devias or Devias or Davis, it's not a cruiser, it's a Corvette, yeah, there we go. The Devias Corvette is still, in fact, the best looking ship that I have designed. The previous mining ship that we designed in stream before the actual Let's Play began, it's still pretty up there, but I still do believe that this thing looks as good as it gets for my current skill when it comes to the editor, and the more I think about this thing, and, considering the kind of description that I gave it before I uploaded it to the Steam library or the Steam workshop, there was a few comments stating that you should, talk about the ship in detail, what exactly is the whole idea behind it, because I have a habit, and I realize it's a kind of a silly habit, and quite frankly, this video that I'm currently recording as I speak is actually kind of a compromise between what I have uploaded already as a video that I have already decided I'm not going to publish, simply because it is just a side-by-side comparison of the evolution of the ship, and a potential project that I thought would be interesting at first until I kind of thought about it a little bit more, which was making a kind of quote, in-character documentary style about the ship and its lore. Now, speaking about lore, I have a silly habit of kind of doing a lot of headcanon. So, for those of you who don't know what a headcanon is, it is basically people figuring out completely unofficial explanations and plot points to an already existing series. So, for example, people have their headcanons when it comes to, say, for example, the Star Wars trilogies and, the Star Wars universe in general, the Matrix universe. They have their own explanations that they think sound much more cooler than what the actual official people have designed for them. And I particularly have this very stupid habit of, say, I'm watching a movie that I've never watched before, I don't know how it ends, but say, for example, I pause it in order to go and make dinner or something, and then my imagination just goes wild and I start thinking about the ways that you could continue this, the movie in order to make it interesting, and obviously, once I go back and actually watch it, then I'm severely disappointed and upset that it turned out to be less interesting than what I had in mind. So, in other words, I do have an abundance of fantasy when it comes to, imagination in general. And when I designed this ship, obviously the design came first, and it was, again, as I already said before, inspired by the racers, the racing ships they had in the Oban Star Racers cartoon from my childhood. But the way that I described the ship was that it was, quote, based on an existing engine, and basically, you know, it was just two unrelated ship engines slapped together for the sake of creating a platform for the usage in mining fields that would be plenty armored and also fast as possible to actually respond to pirate threats. And again, the project that I had in mind until now was to create a sort of lore video behind how exactly this works, what is the Devias class Corvettes and how they operate and why they operate, etc., etc. In the end, I decided that it was a little bit silly of me to do that sort of thing. I'm down. I mean, it would basically be kind of like a very short audiobook about a fantasy ship, right? And I really don't think that I'm quite there yet. So instead, I'm going to just TLDR what the idea behind the ship is, and it's important simply because it has to do with my plans for the upgrades of the ship. If you're watching this video after watching the latest episode, then you already know that this is not how it looks anymore. It has already been upgraded with a shield pack, and yeah, basically TLDR. So, the Devias Corvette is a series of ships, and the way that I wanted to explain it is that these ships operate in the iron sectors and are usually specifically created by the larger mining conglomerates as a sort of in-house source of protecting their business and mining operations without having to resort to hiring external parties such as mercenaries, because, well, money talks, and as it happens, pirates also have money, not just the traders and not just the miners. So they wanted to have their own ships, they wanted cheap ships, and so they came up with the Devias class Corvette. Now, the thing about it, and that's the way that I wanted to talk about it, was that if you would actually take the name, the Devias class Corvette, and just punch it into a database, there would be no content matches, because the Devias as a actual class of ship does not exist. Essentially what happens is that the Devias class, or Devias finger quotes class, is a sort of hybrid ship. So this is a space vessel that is created by, let's just say, uncertificated, not so much as illegal, but non-official shipwrights, and they are usually strung together from different existing ship models into something that is not of its own pattern, because even though, and I quote, even though there's about 1,700 different, individual Devias class ships in the Iron regions, if you would actually place these ships side by side in a row, no two ships would be the same, because every single of these ships are just following a very kind of ish pattern that does not officially exist. But again, it's basically the idea that the name stuck simply just by accident. It could have been pretty much anything, but when people in the Iron sectors talk about the Devias class, they usually mean this sort of thing, where you have two engines, you have a gun platform, and the ship was mostly designed for, quote, low-tier, kind of low-tech solution for escorting and defensive purposes. Now then, I specifically mentioned the engines themselves, and one of the ways that names like these stick is because even though every single ship, every single individual ship is completely different, they do kind of have this one very specific sort of a common part around which the whole ship kind of develops, and in this case, it is the engine itself. Now, I'm very stupid. I did not actually take a look what I call this particular engine, but this engine is it's apart from a different, much larger ship. So in the case of the Devias, they're using engines from a etc series space freighter. Now, the space freighter in question is what I would call a sort of a middle tech ship. It's mostly found in the trinium sectors. Its mode of operation and its actually place of operation is far away from the iron sectors, and it's not actually using this thing. Like, the super freighter is gigantic, so we're talking about a ship that has these engines in a cluster of 6 mounted in the front and the back. So the idea was that what makes this thing unique and why they're using this one is because, first of all, this freighter in question is common enough where, as the ship ages and you have to replace these engines, it's actually easier to replace the whole engine. It's a modular sort of thing. And so these older engines get sold off towards the iron sectors, where they have a very where people are interested in buying them, specifically because they can make stuff like this. And essentially that's what we're doing. What makes this engine very specific like that is, well, again, because the ship that it comes from is just so ambiguous. No, that's not the word. It's so not obscure. It's all over the place. And the other thing is that, unlike other ships, these types of tug engines have their own power plants. So this is one of the design things. So if we actually go in, we take a look at the energy generator and the energy container, you'll notice that well, while the energy container is a part of the hull itself, the generator itself is a part of the engine itself. So you can actually kind of just build the ships around it. And honestly, the only reason why the Devias has 2 of these things is twofold. First of all, you just need a balance, because these things are supposed to go in a grid sort of pattern. They're not symmetrical. Like, the output of this engine is not symmetrical. You kind of need to mirror this thing so that a ship can actually, you know, fly straight. And the other thing is that, even though for a ship of this size, a single or even half of this engine's output would be more than enough to move it at a very reasonable pace, the fact of the matter is that the engines that get sent to the iron sectors and then they get sold off for these mining conglomerates mining very low-tier ores, these engines are nearing their lifespan, at the end of their lifespan, and they simply cannot be operated at normal levels. So you actually have 2 of these tug you know, engine parts. Again, there's supposed to be like 6 of them in a grid pattern on each side of the tug. And, well, these things, specifically on the ship, they're basically operating at about 20% output. And at the same time, they're amazingly sturdy, and they are self-sufficient in the sense that they have their own, you know, their own power plants. And, yeah, basically, the reason why it looks like this is because one of the tugs from the middle sectors, you know, closer to the center of the galaxy, they have an abundance of this particular part, and as it funnels down towards the outer edges of the galaxy, it gets picked up by people who, you know, just make these hybrid ships as a cheap alternative to, quote, established, end quote, official patterns. And yeah, basically that is it. So again, the Devias, or Devias class Corvette looks like this, not because it was simply made like this, but there's no 2 ships quite like this one. And mostly it's just the abundance of parts that they're really working with. And again, the whole idea about the ship, it's a very zippy, tough little nugget. You place a lot of guns on it, and it works pretty well for the established area that it's supposed to operate in. Now, so what happens when you have a alliance of 3 dumbasses, and one of the captains really likes his Device class ship, and he decides to take it on adventure and starts entering closer and closer to the center of the galaxy? Well, then you have to start thinking about what to do with the upgrades. So that is pretty much how we got. So this is the Device Mark I variant, and right next to it over here we have the Mark II. Oh, well, no, it's not the Mark II. It's the Mark I S series. The S series simply stands for Shield. This is the ship that I created in the previous episode. You'll notice that it is exactly the same as the old model, but it has been given this kind of battery pack. And the funny thing is, like, if we take a look at the overall design again, and we take a look at the shield generator, it is just a U-shaped battery pack with, like, you know, cooling stuff over here. It is a very crude, very not simple, no, but a very unelegant solution. Like, you can already tell by the design of this ship, this back part is constructed by a completely different set of people with a completely different aesthetic, and it obviously does not belong on the Devias. And well, yeah, it really does do what it has set out to do it's basically doubling the ship's survivability by adding pretty much the same amount of shield as it currently has hull. You can already tell that simply by the coloring scheme of this thing, it's supposed to be, I'm trying to make it kind of obvious, but it is supposed to be created by the same people who did the Paladin. And after the fact, like, this ship, like, this would be the current version of Razzle Dazzle, and this ship will be retired in its current form. So, in a moment, I'm going to be talking about the Mark II variant that I created just recently, and you kind of need to understand that this is, like, not the norm. So, essentially what happened is that this alliance of 3 dumbasses, you know, heroes, adventurers, whatever you want to call it in the grand scheme, like the context of Avorion and its world, you know, let's call them 3, you know, eccentrics. Let's call it eccentrics who just happen to be very good at what they do. So this is the S variant, and at that point in time, the S variant was cloned. Like, usually the Device class, like, again, the Device class does not exist. Like, there is no pattern of blueprint that you can just take and make a ship like that. Like, every single ship is just going to be different. It's just 2 engines and the gun carriage platform for all of your guns and, you know, energy storage. But essentially what happened is that this specific ship, like in our case that would be the Razzle Dazzle, it got scanned, turned into a blueprint, and then from there, the same people who did the Paladin and who did these battery packs, they worked on it, and then they created the Mark II variant, which is currently not yet named, but yeah, there it is. So this ship, just to show you what I mean, the original Razzle Dazzle, 32,000 hull. Now these ships are in a sandbox, obviously they don't have any of the systems and hull polarizers and nothing like that, right? So this thing is 32,000 hull. The S variant is a little bit more sturdier because a lot of it has been turned into titanium, so it has 47 hull and 64,000 shield. And then you have the Mark II of the quote Device class, and this thing is 126,000 hull and 122,000 shield. This thing is big, and you'll notice that as time goes on, more and more of the design that has gone into the Paladin creeps into this, what started off as a completely a completely kind of, you know, industrial sort of style. You notice that the existing engines, apart from just being upgraded, that also have been giving this kind of outer shell that is very much more sleeker, very much at odds with its old design. And as this thing is going to be upgraded more and more, some of these older plates are going to be removed as we go more and more into shields. Then obviously the thickness of armor plating, just brute armor plating, is not going to matter that much. And so these, you know, these plates are going to start being removed slowly. And yeah, that's basically currently what I have in mind for this ship and how it's going to act. One thing to note is that, again, this is a clone, so in other words, this is something that, using the blueprints of the Razzle Dazzle, it is going to be created, you know, in an actual shipyard, so you'll actually notice that in terms of size, it is not the same as its predecessors. It is actually a little bit bigger than the predecessor ships. A little bit bigger, a little bit badder, and obviously it is almost fully neonite. There is little to no iron left in this thing. That's where a lot of that hit point pool actually comes from. And overall, that is currently the whole idea of the Devias line, or quote, the, you know, finger quotes Devias line, because, you know, the Devias class does not exist. Anyway, the thing is, I do believe that it would be interesting to see how this once Spartan and rudimentary ship slowly gets turned into something a lot more fancy, a lot more, you know, interesting. And this is one of the ways to do it. And yeah, that's basically it. I am not exactly sure if you will see this thing in the next episodes, simply because I still have it saved here somewhere, I think. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so there it is. That's the current version of the, quote, Devias class. Is it still a Corvette? I don't know. But it costs 2 million credits and a $250,000 neonite. So, again, not cheap, and we still obviously have Mutt and Arrow to actually share the resources with, and yeah. But that is it for now. That is the TLDR version of the lore video that I was going to make, and decided against it. Basically would have been the same as what I just did right now, simply with a lot more, you know, jargon and, you know, actual dates and names and, you know, statistics and calling these things specific part numbers and stuff like that. If you like that sort of thing, I might do something similar to it over time. Not just now, though. But yeah, this is something to keep an eye out in the future episodes. Right now, we have these two things to worry about, and one of the things I really wanted to do is, in the next episodes, as we go to war with that one nation to our southeast, I do want to fully automate our mining procedures. So that also means that I need to create a new ship in order to actually give protection to those mining ships. And one of the things that I thought to do was to go to the Buccaneers, go to a shipyard and actually have them build me a ship, and then use it as a template, like I would do with those skeletons that I did from, you know, out of armor, and just use that as a template for a ship and build around it. But yeah, that will have to wait a little bit, and that is something to keep in mind for the upcoming episodes. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. There is still that vote going on in the Spazzy Dragons YouTube channel, the community channel section, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, if you like this sort of thing, tell me. I don't know. If this was interesting, give it a like, and I'll see you next time. Play safe.